Hello, and welcome to the Christmas special, Painless Universal, a conversation with myself, Anne Welsh. Today I'll be talking to Dominic Drew. We'll be talking today about loneliness during Christmas. So many people suffer from this, not sure how to cope. With new restrictions in place, for example, if you live in London, for example, England, London, we are now tier 3. There's so many uncertainty during this time. Many people will now be forced to spend Christmas by themselves, not knowing how to deal with this difficult challenge of being alone during this wonderful time. Dominic is a relationship and personal coach. Her direct approach is unlike anything you've seen before. She solves problems in minutes by understanding the key issues. She's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, Tribe Global for her work, and loves nothing more than facilitating powerful transformation for our clients. But what's really inspiring about Dominic is that most people, she says, spend their life struggling unnecessarily in their self-created struggles, which they need to know how to stop this. Yes, there was a pandemic. You might not have this one day with your family, but we'll be talking about ways to deal with these difficult issues of being lonely during this festive time. Meet Dominic. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. This is a special Christmas edition, as I said, about Christmas and loneliness and with everything going on. Dominic, I'm so happy that you took the time out to spend time with me to talk about this critical issue. How are you?
I'm doing very well, though experiencing a little bit of that loneliness you're talking about because I've actually just in the last 24 hours had to cancel my Christmas plans to see my family as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm resonating with our topic today.
Oh wow! Oh my goodness! I'm experiencing it as well. We in London, England, and we are now tier 3, and there's still the debate going on whether there will be Christmas with your family, whether people could join you. So I'm also in that same bubble as well of that confusion. So I'm really excited to hear this topic from you and your own thoughts about it, because I think a lot of people would be thinking about Christmas and how they will spend Christmas this year. I've done a brief intro about yourself, your background, because, you know, let me just ask you, can you give me a little bit about your background? Let's jump into that first.
Absolutely. So my background is really in intensive personal development work. I found this work, the modality is little known, it's called pathwork. It's one of the most effective things I've found in 20, 25 years of searching and research and experience and training. And it's one of the best modalities that I've found out there. And I found it when I was 19, when I was going through a very, very difficult time. And I had been for several years. I was on antidepressants. I was suicidal at 17. It was a very challenging time, as I think it is for a lot of people at that age. And then over when I had my first experience at 19, I experienced more change in one weekend. That I studied it intensively for the last 20 years. This is what I now teach,
Mm.
and the transition that I made over that time was extraordinary. It wasn't just, oh, I feel happier, I'm not depressed anymore, although I'm not, and I do. I got off meds within about 5 or 6 years. I always had weight on my body that I couldn't lose, and so I would do all the dieting and the pills. The teenagers, they want to like skip the hard part and go right to the weight loss type of thing. I tried all of those things and nothing worked. Working out, I would work out incessantly, didn't work. Nothing sort of shifted my body until I got to a certain point in my process work, in the work that I now teach. And then I turned a corner and the weight just fell off
Yeah.
because whatever it was that was manifesting as weight on my body was resolved. I resolved the issue, and so my body reflected that, and so my physical body looks totally different. My relationship with my family and my romantic relationships are completely different. So from this work, I've really blossomed into who I really am. I can now experience life quite fearlessly as who I am. And I don't have to worry about what people think, and the voices in my head are gone and things like that. So it's been quite a powerful transformation. And so at some point, quite early on, actually, I knew I wanted to teach it. And now I teach other people how to get the same results.
No, that's important. I think I'm so glad you learned it, and you're quite right about saying that that teenagers, the later part of teenagers, is actually quite difficult for so many. And I always say to people, just brace for it, because it's not, you're not the only one going through that difficult time. Everyone else is doing struggling in one way or the other. Um, Coming to Christmas, we are going through Christmas and the holiday season, as people might call it. It depends what, how people look at it. We're going through the holiday season, and what does that mean? People, there's the COVID-19, which the pandemic has affected so many different ways. And the biggest part of its effects, and the biggest cause of the pandemic is caused loneliness, is caused anxiety to people because they haven't been able to do their usual activities. In your opinion, how do you cope and elevate loneliness?
Well, what you just described, the words were really telling. What you said was just the last thing you said there was people are experiencing anxiety because uh, they're not able to do their normal activities,
Yes.
right? If if stopping your normal activities leads to anxiety, that actually points to a deeper problem. It means there's anxiety and you're doing things in your life to avoid finding and dealing with that underlying anxiety. So this pandemic is being seen as a really negative thing, or the tragedy by a lot, and it's very valid to be seen that way. It's also, though, an opportunity to clear out a lot of things that have just been building up that maybe we haven't been paying attention to. And I think physically we've been seeing that a lot. A lot of people are clearing their houses out. Where my mom lives, you can't hire somebody to build a pool because everybody's building a pool in their house. Like they're all like fixing up their home to make it the way they want, because now they actually have to stay there. So people's priorities are changing a little bit.
Yes.
But that's also happening on the inside, in the inner world. The the opportunity here is to see something which you maybe have been trying to avoid for quite some time, because you're having to really face it
Yeah.
rather than just, oh well, I'm just really busy and so I don't really notice. And the fact of the matter is that that underlying issue is going to grow and cause issues if it's not addressed and seen directly either way. And so this can actually be seen as really quite a gift.
I know you say that about the house bit. And I think even on my streets, it hasn't been it hasn't been the best. This is the busiest and it's ever been, and as I've ever seen it. Everyone is doing something, buying something, rejuvenating their house in one way or the other. So if you go to the food store and the store that sells things for housing, and it's as equally as busy, same amount. So I think it's true. People are really changing their priorities and starting to look inside. But there are a few ideas I thought I've read various magazines. There are a few ideas people could do to yourself that are good for the mental health, especially during this difficult time. Can you give me some few ideas that you could share that someone who, okay, now you have to spend Christmas, the COVID is here, there's nothing you can do about it, death rate is increasing. So what few ideas would you suggest to someone who has to spend Christmas by themselves and has never done this before?
Absolutely. So I would start with taking care of your physical body. So being kind of active. Obviously, it can be difficult to do that outside. If you're a runner, of course, you can go outside and run. I actually got into when gyms shut down here and we weren't able to go into the gyms. I had like two just like 10-pound weights. That's like all I had in my house. I'm not like a major gym person. And I found workouts online. And I would do an hour workout with my little 10-pound weights. And it wasn't what I would be doing at the gym, but it really kept me going and kept me in a positive state of mind. Even if I didn't want to do it in the very beginning, by the time I was finished, I just felt stretched out. And it's like it accessed sort of the deeper parts of me and activated me instead of getting kind of sedentary. If you let yourself get sedentary, that's when it starts affecting the mental health. So movement, whether that's just, doing, jumping jacks for, 10 minutes or whatever it is that you find something. Doing yoga is a great way, and it can be really invigorating, to connect with your body and just clear out all of those those things that lead to that loneliness and anxiety. So I think that's really important. And I think connecting with friends as much as possible. You know, in years past when I've been abroad and my family was home over holidays, we would just leave back then there was no Zoom, but we would just leave like Skype on open on the computer, right? Just sort of facing the living room. And I would open presents with them. I'd open my presents and they'd open their presents, and I'm watching and doing all the things. And they would just leave it on, and I would really be able to take part in a very sort of authentic and natural way. So I really recommend video chatting with as many people as you can. Call that friend you haven't called in a long time. Connect, you know, if there's things in your space that are bothering you, clear them out, not in like a go through your whole office type of way, but move them out of just your sight so that you can be surrounded by things that really lift you up and bring you joy. It's amazing how the definition that can make just in itself, you know, just that shift can really just lift your spirits on the inside in a really real way.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. A key question I have there, because I was at the pharmacy the other day and I met a lady, an older lady. I think she was about in her 70s, so 70, late 70s, 80s. And she was struggling about the deliveries because everything is online shopping and she hasn't been to the shop. So she's like, I don't know how to return. She's like, oh, I need someone just to help me out. And the key thing you said there is very good for the young people who are much younger. They could utilize Skype and IT. And someone who is much older and really looking forward to seeing their family, but not having that access because they don't know how to use the computer. It's not something that would immediately, because I know my grandparents, you know, would not, if they were alive right now, God bless them, would not know how to utilize a computer right now. What would you tell kids to tell their parents on how to deal with it? Because they're not coming down, they're not going to see the grandparents, and they might not be able to utilize the IT, the technology. What would you say? What would you tell them? What would you tell the younger ones watching to tell their parents about how to stay non-lonely this Christmas?
You know, if I were able to access the young people in that situation, I would actually say write them letters. Write your grandparents a letter for every day that you would be visiting them that you can't visit, and send it each day so that they receive it. Letters are something that we've just really let go of as a society, and it's really a valuable thing. Every older person I've ever met has told me how much, you know, when the topic comes up randomly on the street, they tell me this, but you know, how much those letters really mean to them. You know, that's a really important way to connect. It's an authentic way to connect. It's handwritten, or you can type it out, but it's something that you put the effort into, and in the putting effort into it, you connect with your grandparent. And so a phone call and a letter each day would, I think, just totally change their holiday experience.
Wow, I did not think about that. And I now remember my mother-in-law, she sends letters and pictures. And because we're so into this IT world, we forget that. We forget
Yes.
that just the little thing. Go to the shop, print out some pictures, and that will keep them busy during this
Yes.
time. So rather than you thinking, oh, the only way to keep them busy is by seeing them, there's other ways if you can't see them now. That picture, and I remember my mother-in-law, she would tell me every day she would look at one different one today and, you know, spread them out so she has enough to last her over the time. And I totally forgot that. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation because other people might have forgotten this vital tool that is important, just to send letters or write something with lots of pictures in it. That keeps them busy and occupied. How would you help someone who's lonely? What methods would you use to help someone? For example, if I know someone's going to be lonely, what would you say to me to do to go help someone who's dealing with loneliness at this time?
So there are two ways to deal with that particular issue. If it's the way you said the second time that you know someone, what could you do? Loneliness, and this is a little counterintuitive, loneliness actually isn't solved by being with another person, actually. Common misconception. Um, Loneliness comes from being disconnected from yourself. And so there isn't actually, in reality, if I want to be 100% accurate about it, any way that you could keep that person from being lonely. You could, of course, connect, you could send texts, you could call, all of those things would help. The loneliness itself, though, comes from feeling like you're not connected to yourself. Because when you are connected with yourself, you're perfectly happy by yourself.
Yes.
And so in that way, when you solve that underlying, just a little shift will make all the difference there. Then you never actually get lonely. You're invincible to loneliness. Loneliness can't come in because you're just really connected to yourself. So ways to connect to yourself, to address directly loneliness, can really be feeling a lot of gratitude for that which you already have. Loneliness comes from a perception of lack, right? Oh, I don't have this person. I don't have this thing. It's like, absolutely. But you do have this amazing place, and you've got these, I'm so glad I have these clothes. And so it's just a way, what gratitude does, everybody talks a lot about gratitude. And I used to really hate that topic because it was just so like overspoken about, and I didn't really understand the value of it. But gratitude is one of the most powerful shifts you can actually make, as it turns out. And the reason is because gratitude turns what you have into enough. So it shifts you from wanting more and needing and lacking and doing this, which always feels lonely and uncomfortable and anxiety inducing for sure, into, okay, right? Into this fullness inside. And that shift keeps the loneliness completely at bay. It does need to be genuine. You can't sort of be like, oh, I really should feel great, or tell yourself gratitude. Like, you need to feel it in your heart. But if you can really let yourself feel it in your body, it's amazing. In that moment, the loneliness goes.
I think that's really true, because that is where it comes to how to keep the pressure low. A lot of people have this, oh, pressure. I have to be with someone. I have to do this. I have to. And what you're just saying is all about keeping that pressure low. Whatever that thing is driving you to want more, that can cause loneliness, because even you could be a widower, you could recently just have broken up with your girlfriend or boyfriend. Your kids might be living in, I live in England, your kids might be in Australia, and they were planning to come down for the holidays, but they can't come because of, obviously, the situation made it impossible. But it's all about that pressure and keeping it low. And a final thought, how do we keep pressure low? When you have all this expectation, you know you want this, you want to see them. What are the final thoughts on keeping that pressure very low?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The pressure of which you speak is really simply a matter of wanting things to be differently than they are. It's called arguing with reality. And arguing with reality is the source of all suffering on earth. All of it, actually. When you can sit in acceptance of how things are, you are at peace. So yes, we have a pandemic. It has thrown things upside down. It's a topsy-turvy. It just is, though. Nobody did anything wrong. You know, people handled it however they handled it, but it's a thing that happened, right? And so when you compare it to a normal Christmas, it may lead you disappointed or lonely or dissatisfied. But if you see it as a new adventure, okay, this is happening now. Oof, I'm living through this. You know, Christmases will be normal at some point, but this is what's happening now. Can that be okay? It's happening anyway. Can you be okay with it? Can you make peace with just looking at it and saying, okay, this is the reality. I'm really excited to see my family again, but this is what's happening now. Let's have this adventure, whatever that is. And in that way, you shift yourself into a place of acceptance of what is, which doesn't mean you're not going to change your life when you want to. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. You don't have to like it. I don't think anybody likes this per se.
Yeah.
But it is happening. And so to fight against it actually really just makes you unhappy, makes you unhappier. So there can be a place of acceptance. Okay, here we are. What would I like to do now? Maybe I'll call my friend. Maybe I'll write my grandparents a letter. Maybe I'll, how would you like to respond in this situation, rather than kind of being almost dragged through it, kicking and screaming, wishing you had a Christmas that can't happen this year. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You said at the beginning that you will be spending Christmas with your lovely dog, and you're excited about it, but this is the first time because you were going to go back home. What are the three key things that you will be doing that you could share with us that to encourage other people, those who will be spending Christmas by themselves, what should they be doing on that day?
What should they be doing if they're spending Christmas by themselves?
Yes.
I am going to be spending it with a lot of gratitude for the things that I do have. And I'm going to irritate my entire family and be online with them all day. That's very important to me. So they're going to see more of me, I think, with distance than they are in person. But I think, I think celebrating is a really good way to do that. And celebrating doesn't need to be done with other people. I have my little my coffee, my espresso, and I sit with my espresso and I sit with my little dog, and I read my favorite book, and I open presents, and I have tea, and I go for a walk, and I breathe in the air. And just for me, it's going to be a celebration of what has happened, not because again I approve of it or I would like to have another pandemic, but this is a big thing that has happened, and a lot of growth has occurred through it. And that I think is worth celebrating. So I think there's always things to be found that are worth celebrating. And if you dedicate your 24 hours to celebrating the things in your life that are worth celebrating, it's going to be a pretty good 24 hours.
Wow. Dominic, I'm really honored you took the time out to speak to me for this Christmas special Painless Universal Conversation. I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you so much.